I have to know their business, or we have to know their business as good as they do, or maybe even better inside of the digital marketing space. Every client with e-commerce, what's the 20% of products making 80% of the sales? Isolate those, identify the good audiences, identify the good areas, expand into those. Companies went from 1 to 6, and then what your job is to analyze and say, well, what happened from 1 to 6? What did you guys do? Can I throw more gasoline on that fire in paid media? Right. All we're doing is just exacerbating how they got there. We're not looking to fix their company.
We were talking about this, about using video views first and then conversions after, or reach campaigns, same targeting, same people, slightly different creative. In that case, it's usually like a video, something that goes really, really wide. And all you do is you just retarget the video view audiences in your conversion campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same strategy, because if you think logically how people buy, what is it? 1 in 100, 2 in 100, maybe 1 click, and then they buy, like probably less than that. But if you're doing that, then you're limiting your TAM, you're limiting your audience. And when this client came to us, it's like, we know there's 500 million, that's out there, or name your TAM. It's like, how do you actually get those people? Well, you do it through strategies like this, because not everybody is ready to buy right now, according to Google or according to Meta.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be able to feed the engine in order to get those people. And ultimately, I'm amazed that the Max Clicks campaigns is doing as well as it is. Like, just from a pure conversion standpoint, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting how and that's basically kind of what you have to identify is, were these people not known by Google that you could scoop up? Because what's really interesting is it clarifies things for you. I'll give you an example. If we didn't do this, what would have happened? We have a TCPA goal set at X. So Google says, I only can risk a little bit.
Right.
I can only go a little bit outside of what I know in order to test. And it's not enough to actually scoop up incremental. Right. My competitor has a TCPA target that's higher than mine. Okay.
And that's a 3-figure number in this particular case, that TCPA target. Okay.
Yeah. It's
not giving away too much.
Yeah, it's a 3-figure. It's a high number.
Significant. This is a significant sale. This is a 4 or 5-figure sale.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So, and what's nice is if I have my TCPA set at X and Google says, I can't explore too much, because if I did that and I was wrong, I'm going to be above the goal. So I need to be below that TCPA goal. The target cost per acquisition, I need to be X or below. So if I test too much, I'll be above. Now, my competitor, let's say they have a TCPA set higher than mine. Their account says, you know what? I have more freedom. I can test. I can go and explore and do other things that, if I'm wrong, I have a lot more buffer than this competitor over here. So Google makes this person win. And this person, as long as they are here and we were here, they will always scoop up the incremental. The shorter the sales cycle, the quicker that it is from impression, click, and buy, or impression, click, and reserve, they are gaining the competitive advantage. Now, they're probably having the same amount of margin as us.
Right.
But that means that they have built in the fact that they will always be exploratory first before we will. So this strategy basically risks a 20% incremental without affecting my main campaign that stays static. And bolting this on, this is only for day 1 of the next 3-week strategy. Like, we're going to see how this evolves over the next 3 weeks.
Right.
This is just day 1, that splitting things out, allowing us to say, no, Google, rather than combining 9 states and cherry picking maybe 1 or 2 cities that you think you can explore, you're going to do 20% exploration in all 9 areas. And that's what it's doing right now. It's actually starting to gain those clicks and those users and that traffic, and we're starting to see sales cycles. But that's the whole theory of it, really, is, can we ask it to risk more? Can we diversify our kind of quote unquote portfolio of ads, I guess I would say, but can we diversify our portfolio of ads without putting all of our risk into our main campaign, and in order to gain that competitive advantage? And then we can just adjust the max clicks, negative keywords, CPCs, if we want to set a max CPC, a daily ad spends. And then once it works, we actually can start to wean ourselves off of that max clicks campaign, because we've achieved higher goals and targets of diminishing returns from our TCPA. So we get to kind of lock in our advantage after we pause our exploratory. Kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And this is a very, very large market. I forget what the actual number is, like when we sort of figured out like the TAM, like what they're leaving on the table. So was it 500 million? Like it's a really large market.
Yeah, it's massive. What's interesting too is like everything that we separate out. If I just go into like that California where it's a 1,500 spend, we captured a 22% search press share and a 24% click share.
Okay.
So we're pretty close to being a quarter of the way through already. And that was one state, one campaign with a TCPA at 1,500. The interesting thing about this is my California. As soon as again, remember I can't identify numbers and letters well. There we go. All right, if we look in, yeah, I know, right? And in California, we're at 30% click share on the max clicks.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting how those two campaigns are having different metrics, even though one is spending 1/5, it's actually making 5% more market penetration. It's audience. It's so cool.
It's wild.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's just one area. Like those are people that are in market for this service. There's a whole other sort of social strategy that can go like this thing is so scalable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just maximizing what you're doing on Google is exciting unto itself. Just being able to use this two-step strategy. But then it's like, all right, well, maybe we go after, like you're going after this market, these people who are interested in this thing. Then you can actually go to social and start to expand your market.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're in the hospitality space. They can go like the Airbnb kind of route.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And there's a whole other, and those are billion-dollar markets. So it's like the scalability of this outside of Google is enormous, but it's like there's so much still left on the table that they weren't able to scoop up just with their TCPA campaigns, which is pretty much what they were running, right?
Yeah, but basically one massive TCPA campaign in 10 states and one daily ad spend and a TCPA target and crossing their fingers.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah.
So,
which is, hey, let Google do the work, which also means, hey, let Google just give me whatever I deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, man, what a horrible way to live.
So one of the questions that comes to mind here is, and we've got a lot of questions which we do have to get to, but like you separated this out by geography, by state, to be able to scale it, as opposed to just keeping it in like one massive campaign for all of the US, for example. Then I know they have another account that's in Canada specifically. So how often would you want to do that? Like, what are the guidelines, or what do you sort of see it? Like when you look at a business, you say, okay, this is, you know, sort of a service-based business. I don't want to say specifically what it is, but it's like, when do you go to that strategy where you do stratify it all out, or look at the data and say, all right, what are my top performing states? How often do you do that when it comes to these types of campaigns?
Yeah, I always start there for like, where is the point where I can maximize efficiencies, cut wasted ad spend, and then know that is this going to be able to grow if I push into areas that are really, really good. I think the introduction of automated bidding inside of the Google Ads ecosystem for a lot of advertisers is, well, I can't do that. Google will do that. I can't do that. Let Google do that. You know, audience bid adjustments. I can't do that. Google will do that because automated bidding ignores those. Well, what about device? I can't do that. Google will do that. Okay. And then it's like, well, what about pushing an ad spend into the state? Well, it's all in one campaign. And so I can't do that. Google will do that. And so the more often that we say, well, I can't do that, Google will do that, is the area that we have those pockets of efficiencies that are now just being blended inside of whoever can leave the most money on the table.
Right.
And so when we start to look at inside of the campaigns and say, where are our pockets of efficiencies, conversing with the client, we say, hey, what are your flagship winning states? What is your flagship areas that you also have? I can't say the words, but you are able to sell more in those states based on your inventory, service-based, listings, yada, yada, yada. Can we push into this further? That's actually a big issue with this client here, is there's certain areas that they can scale and can't scale because of stock/inventory/service offerings things that they can sell.
Right.
So some areas we can't push into. So if we didn't have that conversation with the client, those are areas that we might have been pushing hard and be like, oh, the conversion rate's pretty bad. But like, yeah, we actually can't service that area. But like, whoopsie daisy. So all of that detailed information, all of like, I have to know their business, or we have to know their business as good as they do, or maybe even better inside of the digital marketing space, is because we have specific levers that we can pull, and then know that if we're going to say, let's take a look at an area and say, probably could push, or we probably can adjust, or we probably can increase, or we probably can exclude. But we say, like, I can't do that, Google will do that. That's where you have to stop and think, is there a better way to do that? Can I segment out? Can we hyper segment? I mean, like when I'm talking about like not device, but like that city, that state, that keyword, that ad, clone, and then scaled. Like, is there areas that we can take what's good and exacerbate it, and areas that are not performing or can't performing and minimize?
Right.
But that's every client with e-commerce. What is your 80-20 rule, your Pareto rule on your products? What's the 20% of products making 80% of the sales? Isolate those, identify the good audiences, identify the good areas, expand into those. So find out, like, companies went from 1 to 6, and then what your job is to analyze and say, well, what happened from 1 to 6? What did you guys do? Can I throw more gasoline on that fire in paid media?
Right.
All we're doing is just exacerbating how they got there. We're not looking to fix their company.
Yeah. So you looked in immediately and said, okay, well, California is one of the states that's driving a lot of their revenue, is my guess. And then figured out like the top 5 or 6, and then just figured out based upon ad spend what your daily budget should be. And then did you create, like you said, you created for the top 6? Did you create for all 50 states? I forget now, because I know you went through that quickly to start.
Nope. So we took basically everything that was currently running in those 9 states,
Okay,
changed them into the dual prong strategy, added 3 new states to the entire ecosystem.
got it.
And now we're same spend, and we're hanging tight to see what's the before and after on the back end.
Right.
Because this metric's awesome, but I'm not pressing any buttons until we know how that actually affect the business.
Yeah, 100%.
It's my benchmarking leading indicator to my top line's lagging indicator.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. And in this case, I mean, obviously there's a seasonal element to this as well.
That's what we're coming into. Like, I'm pushing at the time where it usually gets slower.
Right.
So I was like, let's be cautious here, because, if their potential line is here and I'm here, I don't want to, go through this way, because then I break through and I don't have any more potential. So I want to match that as much as I can, because it's inbound right now at the start.
Right. Exactly. And then obviously there's going to be seasonal fluctuation. There's going to be, in this particular case, there's buying cycles. Like, I need it now. Whereas there's another audience that sort of kicks in at a later date, which is, I'm going to prepare or plan for a vacation in this particular case, maybe in 2025. So there's like those people who are looking at it now, and that's, you haven't even gotten to that part yet, but that's going to be sort of an interesting way in which the campaign kind of flows, because people's buyer personas are going to change over time, but maybe not so much in the southern states where it's always warm. They'll always be sort of in market to a certain degree. And I guess that's something that you just get to know after understanding the client, and obviously a lot of back and forth. So you're really intimate with their business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're looking at too, is and there's going to be times too, it's really dynamic. Like, the way that this company works is there's only a finite number of items, services, whatever it is, in each location. And it is almost like a brokered type of relationship. So we can bring party A, they bring party B. Sometimes they can't bring party B, or party B is not available. So those are things that we have to kind of look into, where it's almost up to the day. Like, do we have more to push? If not, we pull back. But they were amazing, and they gave us the full back end access to everything that they track. So I can see, like, okay, that state, we had these X's, they were maybe or may not been redeemed. What was the profitability of that? Do I have more? Like, I can't use my marketing tool, because the metrics in there are like, cool, it's a broken clock. The broken clock's headed in the right direction. So first, thumbs up. Right. And then we have to look at, okay, now do we see that on the back end? And then now it's a really highly dynamic environment.
Yeah, that was sort of my next question, is that, I mean, obviously we're looking at in-app metrics here, but I know they have a lot of really good reporting and data on the back end. So you've got access to that to be able to say, all right, this seems to be pushing here. Let's just make sure that these appointments are actually getting booked and money is being collected.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so that's where, we can always cross our fingers and say, I hope it's doing good, but that's why I always try to see if you can get the back end metrics, or at least the client metrics, that they're the reason why they'd hire or fire you.
Well, I mean, I think, if there's agencies that are watching this, or if there's businesses that are watching this, it's like, if you're holding something back from the person that you're working with, and it's a black box, like you're really only hurting yourself. I mean, sign an NDA or something. Like, we've had clients in the past are like, no, I'm not having you look at my back end. I mean, back end meaning where they collect the money, not like your rear end.
Well, it depends on what the fee is.
I guess it depends on what the fee is. Obviously more for the rear end, but less for the back end. The point is like you have to maintain that sort of level of transparency as if you're running the business on your own, but you have to be able to trust the agency to be able to do that to begin with.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like, if you think about it, if your dentist was like, you go to your dentist, like, oh, my tooth hurts. So like, let's take some x-rays. Like, no,
I don't want you to know what's going on.
Like, right. Wait a minute. Like, well, you're not going to come back if it still hurts. We'll see if it still hurts then.